The coffee in Dr. Jiho Park's cup floated in a perfect sphere before him. He watched it spin slowly in the low gravity of Lunar Research Station Kepler-7, his mind already working through the quantum equations that had kept him awake for 3 nights straight. Outside the reinforced windows, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the black nothing of space. Jiho was tired. The kind of tired that came from pushing boundaries nobody else dared to push. At 34, he had already published 7 papers that changed how humanity understood quantum field manipulation. His latest work was his most dangerous yet. A way to collapse quantum fields instantly. A weapon that could tear apart matter at the atomic level. He had built it to protect Earth. He had no idea it would bring hell to his doorstep. Still up? Dr. Haejin Choi walked into the observation lab, carrying her own coffee. She was his closest friend on the station. One of the few people who understood his work. "Can't sleep," Jiho said simply. He spoke in Korean, grateful to use his native language. "The calculations are almost complete." Haejin sat beside him. "You know the military is going to take it the moment you finish. Let them. If it keeps Earth safe, I don't care who uses it." Neither of them knew they were being watched. Far above the moon, beyond human sensor range, a ship waited. It was long and dark, built for stealth and violence. Inside, creatures with gray skin and 4 arms studied holographic displays showing everything happening inside Kepler-7. Commander Dalvik clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. The Valthrex Empire had been watching humanity for 9 Earth years. They had catalogued humans as primitive, weak, useful only as slaves or test subjects. But this one human, this Jiho Park, he was different. His quantum research was decades ahead of anything the Valthrex had stolen from other species. "The human is alone now," one of Dalvik's officers reported. "The female has left. Security is minimal during night cycle." Well, Dalvik stood from his command chair. He was tall, nearly 3 meters, with armor that gleamed under the ship's red lighting. "Prepare the extraction team. High Magistrate Theron wants this human alive and undamaged. He will work for the Empire, whether he wishes to or not." On the moon, Jiho finally stood and stretched. His back ached from hunching over displays for too long. He decided to take a walk to the supply bay. Fresh air recyclers had been installed there, and the hum of machinery helped him think. He never made it to the supply bay. The attack came without warning. Alarms screamed through the station as explosions ripped through the docking area. Jiho fell as the floor shook beneath him. Red emergency lights bathed everything in blood-colored shadows. Through the station's speakers, he heard screaming. "Hull breach in sections 4 and 7. Armed intruders in the main corridor." Jiho ran. Not away from the danger, but toward the research lab. His work was there. His life's research. He couldn't let it fall into wrong hands. His heart hammered in his chest as he sprinted through corridors filled with smoke and panic. He reached the lab and began downloading his research onto a portable drive. His hands shook. Outside in the corridor, he heard weapons firing. The sounds were wrong. Not human weapons. These made a high-pitched whine that set his teeth on edge. The lab door exploded inward. Jiho spun around and saw them. 3 creatures that looked like nightmares given flesh. Gray skin, 4 arms, faces that were almost human but twisted wrong. They wore armor and carried weapons that glowed with purple energy. "Do not resist, human," one of them said in perfect English. The voice came from a translator device on its chest. "You are claimed by the Valthrex Empire. You will come with us." Jiho grabbed a plasma cutter from the workbench. It was a tool, not a weapon, but he held it like a knife. "I'm not going anywhere with you." The creature that had spoken, Commander Dalvik, laughed. It was a horrible sound. "Brave. Stupid, but brave. Look around you, human. Your station is dying. 23 of your kind are already dead. Surrender, or we kill everyone else too." Through the lab's windows, Jiho could see the station's central hub. Bodies floated in the corridor. People he knew. People he had eaten lunch with just hours ago. The drive in his pocket finished downloading. At least his work was safe. He dropped the plasma cutter. Don't hurt anyone else. Wise choice. They grabbed him with hands that felt like iron. One of them injected something into his neck. The world went gray at the edges. As consciousness faded, Jiho saw Heejin's face on a monitor. She was in the security room, crying, watching, helplessly, as they dragged him away. I'm sorry, he whispered in Korean, though she couldn't hear him. When Jiho woke, he was in a cell. The walls were smooth metal that seemed to absorb light. A force field hummed across the open doorway, crackling with energy. Through it, he could see a larger room filled with alien technology. Screens showed star systems he didn't recognize. His head ached from whatever they had injected him with. He sat up slowly and took stock of his situation. His clothes were the same. The drive in his pocket was gone. They had searched him. Of course they had. A Valthrex approached the cell. Not Commander Dalvik. This one was older, with scars across its face and arms. It wore robes instead of armor. I am Chief Scientist Vorath, the alien said through its translator. You are aboard a Valthrex cruiser, 3 days' travel from your moon. By now, your people think you are dead. We made certain your station's destruction looked complete. You killed 23 people, Jiho said quietly. His voice was steady, but rage burned in his chest. Necessary casualties. Your species is classified as primitive. Individual lives matter little. But you, Dr. Park, you are valuable. Your research into quantum field manipulation is impressive for such a backward species. You will continue this work for the Valthrex Empire. And if I refuse, Vorath clicked his mandibles in what might have been amusement. Then you will die slowly, and we will take your research anyway. Or you can cooperate and live comfortably while advancing the Empire's glory. The choice seems simple. Jiho stood and walked to the force field. He studied it carefully, noting the power fluctuations, the way it pulsed every 3 seconds. His mind was already working, cataloging everything he could see. The power conduits in the ceiling, the design of the door locks, the way Vorath's translator device connected to the ship's network. Where are you taking me? He asked. Valthrex Prime, the Empire's capital world. You will work in the Imperial Science Directorate's primary facility, the finest laboratory in 47 star systems. You should be honored. Jiho nodded slowly. He sat back down on the cell's bench and closed his eyes. To Vorath, he looked defeated, resigned to his fate. The alien scientist left, satisfied that the human understood his situation. But Jiho wasn't defeated. His mind raced behind closed eyes. He thought about the security systems he had seen. The power distribution network, visible through the walls. The way these Valthrex carried themselves with arrogance, certain of their superiority. They had made a mistake, a huge mistake. They thought they had captured a scientist, a tool they could use and discard. They had no idea what they had really done. Jiho opened his eyes and spoke quietly to himself in Korean. They have no idea what they've unleashed. 3 weeks of travel lay ahead. 3 weeks to watch, to learn, to plan. The Valthrex Empire thought they owned him now. They would learn differently. They would learn what happened when you hurt humans, when you kill their friends, when you think you're superior. They would learn why humanity survived every predator Earth ever created. Why humans conquered their own world before reaching for the stars. They would learn that sometimes, the most dangerous weapon isn't the one you can see. Sometimes it's the one sitting quietly in a cell, watching everything, forgetting nothing. Jiho smiled slightly. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man making plans. Dark plans. Terrible plans. Plans that would shake an empire to its foundations. The Valthrex had kidnapped a human scientist. They were about to discover their mistake. And by the time they realized it, It would be far too late. 3 weeks in the cell had taught Jiho patience. The Valthrex cruiser had dropped out of faster-than-light travel 2 days ago. And now Valthrex Prime filled the viewport. The planet was massive, twice the size of Earth, with 3 moons orbiting like silent guardians. Cities covered entire continents, their lights visible even from space. Jiho had spent those 3 weeks doing exactly what his captors wanted. He stayed quiet. He ate the tasteless food they provided. He answered their questions about human physiology and culture. He seemed broken, cooperative. Exactly what they expected from an inferior species. But every moment, he watched. He learned their language by listening to guards talk. He memorized shift changes. He studied how their technology worked through careful observation. The Valthrex were advanced, yes, but they were sloppy. Arrogant. They had conquered 47 star systems not through innovation, but through theft and slavery. They took technology from species they defeated and claimed it as their own. That was their weakness. They didn't understand what they stole. They just used it. The cell door opened without warning. Commander Dalvik stood there with 4 guards. "You will come with us, human. Chief Scientist Vorath wishes to begin your work immediately." Jiho stood without resistance. They put restraints on his wrists that hummed with the same energy as the cell's force field. The corridor outside was huge, built for beings larger than humans. Everything was scaled up, making Jiho feel like a child in an adult's world. They walked through the ship to a transport bay. Through windows, Jiho caught glimpses of the Valthrex fleet. Hundreds of ships orbited the planet, each one bristling with weapons. This was an empire built for war, for conquest, for taking what others built. The shuttle ride to the surface took an hour. Jiho sat in silence, surrounded by guards who watched him like he might explode at any moment. If only they knew how right they were to be worried. The Imperial Science Directorate was a fortress that pretended to be a research facility. Walls 10 meters thick. Guard towers every 50 meters. Automated defense systems tracked every movement. They brought Jiho to a laboratory deep in the complex, past security checkpoints that scanned everything from body temperature to brainwave patterns. Chief Scientist Vorath waited in the laboratory. The room was enormous, filled with equipment Jiho recognized from his own research. Quantum field generators, particle accelerators, neural interface stations, quantum field. They had stolen it all from species the Valthrex had conquered. "Welcome to your new home, Dr. Park," Vorath said. His translator made the words sound almost friendly. "Here, you will complete your quantum destabilization research. The weapon you were building for your primitive Earth government, you will now build for the Valthrex Empire." Jiho looked around the laboratory slowly. "This equipment is outdated. 3rd-generation field generators. The neural interfaces are poorly calibrated. I need better tools." Vorath's mandibles clicked in irritation. "This is the finest laboratory in the Empire. Then your empire is further behind than I thought," Jiho said calmly. "But I can work with it. I'll need full access to your technical database, specifications for your power systems, information about your quantum core network." "Why would you need that?" "Because quantum field manipulation doesn't exist in isolation. It interacts with every energy system nearby. If I don't understand your power infrastructure, I might accidentally cause a cascade failure that destroys this entire facility." Jiho paused. "Unless you want that?" "Unless you want that." Jiho paused. Vorath stared at him for a long moment. Finally, he gestured to one of the technicians. "Grant him limited database access. Level 3 clearance only. Grant him limited database access. Grant him limited database. Grant him limited database access." "Level 3 won't be enough," Jiho said. "But it's a start." Over the next 2 weeks, Jiho worked. He asked questions constantly. How did the Valthrex power grid function? Why did they use centralized quantum cores instead of distributed systems? Where were the main network hubs located? He framed every question as necessary for his research. And Vorath, eager to see results, answered. The Volthrex didn't realize they were teaching Jiho exactly how to destroy them. At night, locked in his quarters, Jiho used the terminal they had provided. They monitored everything he did, of course. But Jiho had learned their monitoring systems. He knew when the night shift changed. He knew the security AI had a 7-second gap in coverage every 4 hours when it cycled through maintenance protocols. 7 seconds wasn't much. But it was enough to access systems he wasn't supposed to see. Enough to plant small pieces of code that looked like routine system checks. Enough to start building something the Volthrex would never detect until it was too late. 1 month into his captivity, Security Director Kryn came to observe. Kryn was different from Vorath. Less arrogant. More careful. He watched Jiho work with eyes that actually saw. "You are very cooperative for a slave," Kryn said. Jiho didn't stop working. "I'm not stupid. You killed my friends. You destroyed my home. But I'm alive. And I want to stay that way. Fighting you would be suicide. And yet you ask many questions. Questions that seem to go beyond your research. I'm a scientist. Curiosity is what we do." Kryn circled the laboratory slowly. "I have studied humans. Your species has a history of resistance, of rebellion. Even when outmatched, you fight. But you, Dr. Park, you submit so easily. Why?" This was dangerous ground. Jiho set down his tools and looked directly at Kryn. "You want the truth? I'm terrified. Every day, I wake up knowing I'm at your mercy. I cooperate, because cooperation means I might live. That's all. Is that what you wanted to hear?" Kryn studied him for another long moment. Then, he left without another word. Vorath laughed once Kryn was gone. Security Director Kryn sees threats everywhere. Pay him no mind. Continue your work. But Jiho had noted the suspicion in Kryn's eyes. He would need to be more careful. The Volthrex might be arrogant, but they weren't all stupid. 2 months into captivity, Jiho completed his first major project. A quantum field amplifier that could boost the power output of any energy system by 40%. Vorath was ecstatic. High Magistrate Theron himself came to see the demonstration. Theron was massive even for a Volthrex, with jeweled armor and a crown of twisted metal. He watched as Jiho activated the amplifier. Power readings spiked across every monitor. The quantum core in the facility hummed with increased energy. "Impressive," Theron said. "With this technology, our weapons will be unstoppable. Our shields impenetrable. You have done well, human." "Thank you, Magistrate," Jiho said, bowing his head like a servant. What neither Theron nor Vorath understood was what else the amplifier did. Hidden in its code was a trigger, a small piece of programming that connected to the facility's main network. It sat dormant, waiting, learning, spreading quietly through every system it touched. Jiho had built a virus. Not a computer virus. Something worse. A quantum virus that existed in the space between normal code and quantum states. Undetectable by conventional security. Once activated, it would spread through the Volthrex quantum core network like wildfire. "I am told you require access to the central database now," Theron said. "Vorath believes your next project requires this." "Yes, Magistrate. I'm ready to begin work on the destabilization weapon itself. But I need to understand your entire power infrastructure. One mistake could destroy half this planet." Theron nodded. "Security Director Kryn has objections. He believes you cannot be trusted." "Then keep monitoring me," Jiho said simply. "I have nothing to hide. I just want to do my work and stay alive." Theron studied him with eyes that held the weight of an empire. Finally, he gestured. "Grant him Level 7 access. But increase monitoring. If he attempts anything suspicious, kill him immediately." "Of course, Magistrate," Vorath said, clicking his mandibles happily. That night, Jiho sat in his quarters, and stared at the terminal. Level 7 access. He had just been handed the keys to the Valthrex Empire's entire infrastructure network. Every power system, every defense grid, every quantum core hub, across 47 star systems. He thought about the 23 people who died on Kepler-7. He thought about Hagen's face on that monitor, watching helplessly. He thought about every species the Valthrex had enslaved, every world they had conquered, every life they had casually erased. His fingers began to move across the terminal. Not frantically, but with calm precision. He had waited 2 months for this moment. 2 months of playing the cooperative slave. 2 months of building their trust while building their doom. The code he wrote was elegant, beautiful, even. It would spread through the quantum network, hiding in normal system processes. It would map every critical system, every backup, every failsafe. And when Jiho gave the command, it would tear it all down at once. The Valthrex thought they had captured a scientist. They thought they had gained a valuable asset. They celebrated their success in acquiring human technology. They had no idea they had invited a plague into their empire. A plague that looked like a small, quiet man who asked too many questions and worked too hard. A plague that smiled and bowed and called them magistrate while planning their destruction. Jiho finished the night's work and closed the terminal. He lay on his sleeping platform and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere out there, humanity was looking for him. He hoped they would be ready when the time came. He hoped they would understand what he was about to unleash. But even if they weren't ready, he would do it anyway. Because the Valthrex had made a fatal mistake. They had hurt his people. They had killed his friends. They had assumed he would break. They were about to learn what humans did when you pushed them too far. They were about to learn that mercy was a choice. And Jiho Park was done being merciful. Lieutenant Yuna Kang stared at the debris field where lunar station Kepler-7 had been. Her stealth scout ship drifted silently through the wreckage, sensors scanning everything. 3 months had passed since the attack. 3 months since Earth lost contact with 24 researchers. 3 months of searching for answers. The official report said it was a catastrophic systems failure. An accident. But Yuna knew better. She had found energy signatures in the debris that didn't match any human technology. Weapons, signatures, and something else. A piece of metal with strange markings that her ship's AI couldn't identify. This was an attack, she said to herself. And someone took them. On Valthrex Prime, Jiho sat in the central database archive. 2 months of careful work had earned him privileges that would have seemed impossible when he first arrived. He now worked mostly unsupervised. Vorath trusted him. More importantly, Theron trusted him. They saw him as a broken slave who had accepted his fate. They couldn't have been more wrong. Jiho's fingers moved across the holographic interface. He was deep in the Empire's infrastructure network now. He could see everything. Power grids, spanning star systems, defense networks protecting colonies, the quantum core hubs that powered it all. And most importantly, he could see the connections, how everything linked together in a beautiful, fragile web. Beautiful because of its complexity. Fragile because the Valthrex had never designed it. They had stolen pieces from a dozen different species and forced them to work together. It functioned, but barely. One strong push in the right place, and the whole thing would collapse. Jiho had been pushing at those weak points for weeks now. Small things at first. A power fluctuation here. A communication glitch there. Nothing that would raise alarms. Just normal system irregularities that happened in any large network. But today, he was ready for more. He activated the first phase of his virus. It spread through 3 Valthrex colony worlds simultaneously. Not the homeworld. Not yet. He needed to test it first. Make sure it worked exactly as planned. On the colony world, Talrix 4, defense grids suddenly powered down. Planetary shields flickered and died. Orbital weapons platforms went offline. The planet was defenseless for exactly 17 minutes before backup systems activated. On Darvex 9, industrial fabricators malfunctioned. Instead of producing ship components, they created useless scrap metal. Instead of food processing, they contaminated an entire month's worth of supplies. Economic chaos rippled through the entire sector. On Veltros 3, the communication network crashed. But before it crashed, it broadcast something interesting. Secret transmissions from High Magistrate Theron. Messages about subjugated species being used for medical experiments. Orders to execute prisoners of war. Proof of war crimes that the Empire had hidden for decades. Across all three worlds, Volthrex citizens saw their Empire's true face for the first time. Rebellions that had been quietly brewing suddenly had fuel for their fires. Overseer Thalax, the colonial administrator for Talrix 4, sent an urgent message to Valthrex Prime. Our systems are failing. We need technical support immediately. Vorath read the reports with confusion. System anomalies on 3 worlds? All at the same time? This makes no sense. All. Could it be sabotage? Security Director Kryn asked. From whom? Those worlds are separated by hundreds of light years. No single entity could coordinate such an attack. But Kryn looked at Jiho, who was working quietly in the corner of the laboratory. Vorath laughed. He has been under constant surveillance. He has done nothing but work on the projects we assigned him. You are paranoid, Kryn. Perhaps. Or perhaps we underestimate what he is capable of. Jiho kept working, seemingly oblivious to their discussion. Inside, his heart raced. The virus had worked. 3 planets touched, 3 planets disrupted, and the Volthrex had no idea what caused it. They thought it was technical problems. Random failures. They would send their best technicians to fix it, and those technicians would be infected too. They would carry the virus back to other systems. It would spread like a plague. Invisible and patient. Far from Volthrex space, Admiral Minho Han commanded the UEDF carrier battle group Eclipse. He was a careful man who had fought in the Mars Rebellion 30 years ago. He knew when something didn't add up, and Kepler 7 didn't add up. Show me the timeline again, he ordered. His tactical officer brought up the holoscreen. Station Kepler 7 reported normal operations. 3 hours later, total communications blackout. When rescue teams arrived, the station was destroyed. All 24 personnel presumed dead. Presumed? We never recovered all the bodies, sir. 3 are still missing, including Dr. Jiho Park. Minho studied the data. What was Park working on? Classified. But intelligence suggests it was quantum, weapons, research, and now he's missing, along with his research. Minho pulled up a star map. If someone took him, they'd need a fast ship, something with stealth capabilities to avoid our sensors. That would require technology we've never seen before, sir. Exactly. Minho made a decision. Deploy stealth reconnaissance probes to these coordinates. If someone out there has technology we don't know about, I want to find them. Ambassador Doyun Lee arrived at the UEDF headquarters 3 days later. He was Earth's chief diplomat, a man who had negotiated treaties with the Mars colonies and the Europa Mining Consortium. Now he faced something completely new. First contact with an aggressive alien species. We've detected them, Admiral Minho said, showing him the probe data. 3 stealth ships in the outer system. They match the energy signatures found at Kepler 7. Have they seen us? Not yet. Our probe technology is better than we thought. Doyun studied the alien ships. They were huge, heavily armed. If they took our people, we need to get them back. Agreed. But diplomatically if possible. We don't know how many ships they have. Doyun nodded. Prepare a first contact package. I'll try to negotiate. Back on Volthrex Prime, Jiho received a message on his terminal. It appeared during one of his carefully timed security gaps. A message hidden in system maintenance logs. Someone from outside the Empire. If you can read this, we're coming for you. The message was in Korean. Jiho's hands trembled as he read it. Someone had found him. Someone knew he was alive. He quickly composed a response, embedding it in similar maintenance logs. Don't come yet. Not ready. Wait for signal. The message came from Yuna Kang. She had tracked the Valthrex ships back to their territory. She had infiltrated a supply depot on the border and accessed their communication network. She had found references to a human prisoner. A scientist. It had to be Jiho. We found him, she reported to Admiral Minho. He's alive, but he says to wait. Wait for what? He didn't say. But if Dr. Park is telling us to wait, we should listen. He's the smartest person I've ever met. High Magistrate Theron called a council meeting. The system failures were spreading. 7 worlds now reported anomalies. The Empire's best technicians couldn't find the cause. Worse, subjugated species were using the chaos to rebel. We need the humans' expertise, Vorath said. He understands quantum systems better than any of our scientists. And if he is the cause? Kryn demanded. How could he be? He has no access to those systems. He works only in this facility. Then explain how 7 worlds fail at once. Explain how our secrets broadcast themselves. This is not random chance. Theron raised a hand for silence. If the human is involved, we will discover it. But first, we must stop these failures. Bring him to me. They brought Jiho to the throne room. It was massive, with a ceiling that stretched 50 meters high. Theron sat on a throne made from the metal of conquered ships. Around him stood his advisors and generals. Dr. Park, Theron said. Our empire faces a technical crisis. Systems are failing across multiple worlds. We need your expertise to find the cause. Jiho bowed respectfully. I am honored by your trust, Magistrate. What do you need from me? Full access to the quantum core network. Complete authority to investigate and repair any systems necessary. Kryn stepped forward. Magistrate, I must object. This is exactly what he would want if he were behind the attacks. And if he is innocent, Theron countered. We waste time being paranoid while our empire crumbles. I have made my decision. Dr. Park, you will have everything you need. Thanks for watching. And warily why? I have made my decision. We have made it 9-hearted. Dr. Park, Jiho bowed again. I will not disappoint you. Magistrate. That night, Jiho worked late in the Central Systems hub. He was alone except for 2 guards, who watched from a distance. They didn't understand what he was doing. They just saw him working at terminals, running diagnostics, speaking quietly to himself in his alien language. They didn't see him embedding new code into every system he touched. They didn't see him mapping the entire Empire's infrastructure. They didn't see him preparing the kill switch that would activate everything at once. He sent another message to Yuna through the maintenance logs. This time, it included data, schematics, defense network layouts, quantum core hub locations, everything humanity would need to respond when the time came. When you see the lights go out, he wrote, come fast. Yuna received the message aboard her scout ship. She stared at the data, flooding her screens. Jiho hadn't just found a way to escape. He had found a way to cripple an entire empire. Get this to Admiral Minho immediately, she ordered her AI. And tell him to prepare the fleet. Jiho stood on the observation deck of the Imperial Science Directorate. Through the windows, he could see Valthrex Prime's capital city. Millions of lights, billions of beings. An empire that had conquered 47 star systems through brutality and theft. He thought about the 23 people who died on Kepler 7. He thought about all the species enslaved by the Valthrex. He thought about the choice he was about to make. What he planned would cause suffering. Systems would fail. People would die. Not all of them would be guilty. Some were just citizens living their lives under an evil regime. But if he didn't act, the Valthrex would continue. They would conquer more worlds, enslave more species, kill more innocents. Sometimes, the only way to stop evil was to break it completely. Jiho placed his hand against the window. The glass was cold under his palm. Soon, he whispered in Korean. Very soon now. The day started normally on Valthrex Prime. Workers went to their jobs. Ships launched from orbital platforms. The machinery of Empire ground forward like it had for 300 years. High Magistrate Theron was meeting with his generals, planning the conquest of 2 new star systems that had resources the Empire needed. None of them knew that in a laboratory deep in the Imperial Science Directorate, Dr. Jiho Park was about to break their world. Jiho sat at his terminal, fingers hovering over the holographic interface. 3 months of planning had led to this moment. 3 months of planting code, mapping systems, building the perfect trap. The virus he had created was in every system now. Every quantum core hub, every defense grid, every colonial world. It sat dormant, waiting for a single command. He thought about sending a message first. Some grand speech about justice and revenge. But that wasn't who he was. Actions spoke louder than words. The Valthrex would understand, soon enough. He entered the activation code. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then, the Empire began to die. On Valthrex Prime, the power grid failed first. Lights across the capital city flickered and went dark. Emergency backups activated, but they were infected too. They failed within minutes. Billions of beings were suddenly plunged into darkness. The Imperial flagship Dominion, orbiting the planet, suddenly detected missile locks, not from enemy ships, from other Valthrex vessels. The IFF identification system had been corrupted. The ship's AI thought its own fleet was hostile. Automated weapons began tracking friendly targets. What's happening? Admiral Corvon demanded from the flagship's bridge. Unknown, sir. Our systems are turning on us. On the colony world Talrix 4, defense grids didn't just fail. They turned inward. Orbital weapons platforms began targeting the planet they were supposed to protect. Overseer Thalax watched in horror as his own defenses locked onto the capital city. Override. Emergency override. Systems not responding. The AI is locked out. Across 30 colonial worlds, the same thing happened simultaneously. Defense grids failed. Communications went silent. Industrial fabricators went haywire. And everywhere, in every system, a message began broadcasting. The same message in every language the Empire used. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. This is the price of taking what belongs to us. In the Imperial Science Directorate, alarms screamed. Security Director Kryn ran toward the central laboratory. He knew. Somehow, he had always known. The human had done this. Impossible as it seemed, the human had broken their entire empire. He found Vorath standing in the laboratory, staring at Jiho with mandibles clicking in confusion. What have you done? What? Jiho stood calmly at his terminal. What you forced me to do. You killed my friends. You destroyed my home. You thought you could enslave me and steal my work. You were wrong. This is impossible. You were monitored constantly. Your monitoring systems had gaps. Small ones, but enough. Every 7 seconds during maintenance cycles, I had access you didn't know about. I've been preparing this for 3 months. Kryn burst into the room with guards. Kill him. Kill him now. The guards raised their weapons, but the power to the laboratory died. Their weapons were connected to the facility's power grid. The lights went out. Emergency systems tried to activate and failed. Everything Jiho had touched was infected. Everything was dying. In the darkness, Jiho's voice was calm. I wouldn't do that. The detention systems are offline. That means the holding cells are open, including the ones with all the scientists and engineers you've enslaved from other species. How many of them do you think are angry with you? As if on cue, Screams echoed through the facility. The prisoners were free, and they were not grateful to their captors. High Magistrate Theron stood in his throne room as the power died around him. His generals were shouting. His advisors were panicking. Reports flooded in from across the Empire. Rebellions on 15 worlds. Fleet ships firing on each other. Quantum cores entering cascade failure. How? He demanded. How did one human do this? Nobody had an answer. Nobody understood that Jiho hadn't just sabotaged their systems. He had created a quantum virus that existed in the space between code and physical reality. It spread through their network like a living thing, learning and adapting. Every attempt to purge it just spread it further. The Empire's technology was turning against them, and there was no way to stop it. Captain Salmon Yu commanded the UEDF stealth destroyer Retribution. She had been positioned at the edge of Valthrex space for 2 weeks, waiting for a signal. When the signal came, it was impossible to miss. 30 star systems suddenly went dark at once. That's our cue, she said. All ships, move in. But remember, we're here to extract Dr. Park, not start a war. Admiral Minho Han watched from the carrier battle group Eclipse. The fleet began moving toward Valthrex Prime, but slowly, carefully. They weren't here to conquer. They were here to rescue one of their own. Send a message to any Valthrex ships that still have communications, Minho ordered. Tell them we're not their enemy today. Tell them we're just taking back what belongs to us. On Valthrex Prime, Jiho moved through the darkened corridors of the Science Directorate. He wasn't running. He was walking with purpose, helping other prisoners escape. A Drevnari scientist who had been enslaved for 5 years. A Crothian engineer taken from her homeworld. A Malvex doctor forced to perform experiments he found morally wrong. This way, Jiho said, leading them toward the emergency exits. Human ships are coming. They'll help you get home. You did this? The Drevnari scientist asked in amazement. You destroyed the Empire? I broke their systems. The Empire was already weak. I just showed everyone how weak. Behind them, Vorath appeared, badly wounded but still moving. He had a weapon in one of his 4 hands. You destroyed everything. Centuries of advancement, the glory of the Empire. Jiho turned to face him. You had no glory. You were parasites who stole from species you conquered. You murdered and enslaved in the name of superiority. But you were never superior. You were just good at taking what others built. We gave you everything. A laboratory. Resources. Purpose. A laboratory. A laboratory. You gave me nothing. You took from me. And now, I've taken everything back. Vorath raised his weapon, but a plasma bolt struck him from behind. The Drevnari scientist lowered her weapon, the one she had taken from a guard. Go, she told Jiho. We'll hold here. You need to survive this. You need to tell the galaxy what happened. Jiho nodded and ran. Behind him, freed prisoners fought their former captors. The Empire was eating itself from within. He reached the exterior landing platforms. The city was in chaos. Fires burned, where ships had crashed. Riots had broken out in the streets. The perfect order the Valthrex had maintained for centuries was collapsing into anarchy. A stealth shuttle descended from the sky. The ramp lowered, and Unikang stood there with a rifle. Dr. Park? We need to leave now. Jiho ran up the ramp. Wait. There are others. Scientists they enslaved. We can't leave them. Tell me where. Jiho pointed. Yuna spoke into her communicator. Captain Yu, we need extraction teams at these coordinates. Already on it, Salmon's voice came back. Get Park out of there. We'll get the others. The shuttle lifted off as explosions rocked the city below. Through the viewport, Jiho watched his work unfold. The Valthrex Empire was burning, not from external attack, but from internal collapse. Everything connected to the quantum network was failing. Ships fell from the sky. Buildings lost power. Even basic communication was impossible. You really did it, Yuna said, staring at him. You actually took down their entire empire. I gave them a choice, Jiho said quietly. They could have let me go. They could have shown mercy. Instead, they chose cruelty. This is the consequence. On the surface, High Magistrate Theron stumbled through his palace. His guards were gone, his advisors had fled. His empire, built on the backs of slaves and watered with the blood of conquered species, was dying. He reached a communication terminal that still functioned. With shaking hands, he entered a code that would reach Earth. He had to try, had to see if there was any way to stop this. A human face appeared on the screen. Ambassador Doyun Lee looked at him with eyes that held no sympathy. What do you want? Please, Theron said, his pride finally broken. We surrender. Whatever you want, just stop this. Make him stop this. Make him? Doyun's voice was cold. You took him by force. You killed his friends. You tried to enslave him. And now, you're surprised that he fought back? We didn't understand. We thought humans were weak. We are weak. One human against an empire of billions? That should have been impossible. But you made a mistake. You assumed that strength is only physical. You assumed that having bigger ships and more weapons made you superior. You forgot that the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun or a bomb. It's an idea. And ideas spread. What do you want from us? Doyun leaned forward. Complete surrender. Every enslaved species freed immediately. All conquered worlds granted independence. War crimes, trials for your leadership, and a promise, written in whatever passes for blood among your kind, that you will never threaten another species again. And if we refuse, then Dr. Park's virus continues to spread. Your empire continues to collapse. And when you're weak enough, the species you enslaved will come for revenge. We won't stop them. Theron looked at the camera. He saw no mercy in the human's eyes. He had begged an inferior species for help, and they had offered him only justice. Justice was cold. Justice was hard. Justice was earned. I accept, he said. All of it. Just please, stop the collapse. Doyun nodded. Put it in writing. Broadcast it to every world in your empire. Let everyone know that the Valthrex have fallen. Then maybe we'll help you rebuild into something better. The transmission ended. Theron slumped to the floor. His empire was gone. 300 years of conquest, erased in a single day, by one human they had underestimated. Aboard the Retribution, Jiho watched as Valthrex ships began broadcasting their surrender. Across the empire, colonies were declaring independence. Enslaved species were taking control of their own worlds. The map of Valthrex space was dissolving before his eyes. You've started a revolution, Somin said. I've started 30 revolutions, Jiho corrected. Every species they conquered is taking back their freedom. Some of them will be kind to their former masters. Some won't. That's not my choice anymore. Do you regret it? Jiho thought about the 23 people who died on Kepler 7. He thought about all the species who had suffered under Valthrex rule. He thought about the empire that had thought itself untouchable. No, he said finally. I don't regret stopping them. I only regret that it had to be done this way. The empire was begging for mercy now. But mercy was something earned, not given. And the Valthrex Empire had earned something very different. 6 months had passed since the collapse. The galaxy looked very different now. Where the Valthrex Empire once controlled 47 star systems, 12 independent states now existed. Some were peaceful. Some were still fighting civil wars. The species that had been enslaved were taking back their worlds, and not all of them were gentle about it. Jiho stood on a balcony, overlooking the ruins of what had been the Imperial Science Directorate. A coalition of forces now occupied Valthrex Prime. Human ships, Drevnari cruisers, Crothian frigates, Malvex support vessels. Species that had suffered under the Empire were now working together to rebuild something better. The morning air was cold. It reminded Jiho of Earth, of mornings at Kepler 7 before everything changed. Before the attack. Before he became the man who broke an empire. Dr. Park? A voice spoke behind him. Ambassador Doyun Lee stepped onto the balcony. The tribunal is ready. Already? Jiho checked the time. I thought we had another hour. They moved it up. Hi, Magistrate Theron's health is failing. They want to finish the proceedings while he can still testify. They walked through corridors that had once been forbidden to non-Valthrex. Now they were filled with beings from a dozen species, all working to administer justice. The tribunal hall was massive, built to show the Empire's power. Today, it served a different purpose. Theron sat in a simple chair, not on his throne. He looked small now. Diminished. The jeweled armor was gone. He wore plain clothes and restraints that prevented him from moving quickly. Around him sat his former advisors and generals, all awaiting judgment. The tribunal consisted of representatives from every species the Valthrex had conquered. A Drevnari judge, a Crothian prosecutor, a Malvex defender, because even the guilty deserved defense, and Chancellor Yunji Nam, representing Earth and humanity. This tribunal will now hear testimony regarding the attack on Lunar Station Kepler 7, Unji said. She was a stern woman who had led Earth through the Mars Rebellion. She did not suffer fools or tyrants. Dr. Jiho Park, please approach. Jiho walked to the witness stand. Every eye in the hall watched him. He was famous now. The human who broke an empire. Some called him a hero. Some called him a monster. He didn't know which was true anymore. Dr. Park, Yunji began. Please describe the events of the attack for the tribunal. Jiho took a breath. 3 months ago, by Earth calendar, I was working at Lunar Station Kepler 7. At approximately 2300 hours, the station was attacked by Valthrex forces. 23 people were killed. I was abducted and taken to Valthrex Prime, where I was forced to work on weapons research. And your response to this abduction? I cooperated. I appeared compliant while secretly sabotaging their systems. I built a virus that spread through their quantum network and caused the empire-wide collapse. Theron spoke up suddenly. You destroyed everything. Millions died in the chaos you created. Jiho turned to look at him. How many millions did you kill building your empire? How many species did you enslave? How many worlds did you conquer? I gave you a choice. You could have released me. Instead, you tried to use me as a tool. This is the consequence of that choice. The Drevnari judge banged his gavel. The accused will remain silent unless asked to speak. The trial continued for hours. Witness after witness testified. Scientists who had been enslaved, soldiers who had followed orders, civilians who had lost families in the rebellions that followed the collapse. Not everyone blamed the Valthrex. Some blamed Jiho for starting the chaos. During a break, Jiho stood outside the tribunal hall. Dr. Heejin Choi found him there. She had come from Earth to attend the trials. It was the first time they had seen each other since the attack. Jiho, she said quietly in Korean. I thought you were dead. I was, in a way. The person I was before. He died on Kepler 7. What came back is something different. Do you regret it? What you did? Every day. But I would do it again. They killed our friends, Heijin, Junho, Minseo, Daeun, all of them. What was I supposed to do? Accept slavery? Build weapons for them? Sometimes, the only way to stop evil is to break it completely. Heijin put her hand on his shoulder. I know. I just hate that you had to be the one to do it. Inside the hall, the tribunal recalled Jiho to testify. This time, Chief Scientist Vorath was brought forward, still recovering from injuries sustained during the collapse. Dr. Vorath, the Crothian prosecutor said. You supervised Dr. Park during his captivity. Did he ever express remorse for his actions? Vorath looked at Jiho with something like respect in his eyes. No. He was patient, methodical. He played us perfectly. I thought he was broken, compliant. I should have listened to Security Director Kryn. He saw what we refused to see. And what was that? That we had not captured a scientist. We had invited a plague into our empire. The human was never our prisoner. We were his. Admiral Minho Han testified next about the human military response. We positioned ships throughout Valthrex space, ready to extract Dr. Park. But we quickly realized we didn't need to invade. The empire was collapsing from within. Our role became humanitarian, helping evacuate civilians and establish order. Lieutenant Yuna Kang described finding Jiho. He was calm. Completely calm. He had just destroyed an empire, freed thousands of slaves, and started 30 revolutions. And he was calm. I asked him if he was okay. He said, I did what needed to be done. Now others will decide if it was right. Captain Saman Yu explained the extraction operation. We rescued Dr. Park and over 200 enslaved scientists and engineers from various species. Many of them are here today, ready to testify about their treatment under Valthrex rule. For 3 days, the tribunal heard testimony. At the end, Chancellor Yunji called for final statements. Theron stood, his movements slow and painful. I am guilty, he said simply. Guilty of conquest. Guilty of slavery. Guilty of believing my species was superior to others. I thought the human was weak. I thought all lesser species were tools to be used. I was wrong. The human showed me that strength is not about size or weapons. It is about will. About refusing to be broken. I do not ask for mercy. I ask only that my people be given a chance to be better than I was. Then Jiho stood. I am also guilty. Guilty of sabotage. Guilty of causing system failures that led to deaths. Guilty of starting revolutions that are still claiming lives today. I did these things deliberately. I knew people would die. I did it anyway because the alternative was worse. The Valthrex Empire would have continued to conquer, enslave, and destroy. Sometimes peace requires war. Sometimes mercy requires justice. I don't ask for forgiveness. I ask only that what happened here serves as a lesson to everyone. The tribunal deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, the Drevnari judge spoke. This tribunal finds the former leaders of the Valthrex Empire guilty of crimes against sentient species. They will serve life sentences, witnessing the rebuilding of the worlds they destroyed. They will see their former territories become free, peaceful systems. That will be their punishment. As for Dr. Jiho Park, this tribunal finds his actions to be a direct response to aggression against his species. While his methods caused suffering, they also freed thousands and prevented future atrocities. He is cleared of criminal charges. However, he will serve as an advisor to the new Galactic Council, ensuring that no species ever builds an empire like the Valthrex again. Jiho felt relief and burden at the same time. He was free, but he would spend years helping clean up the mess he had made. The tribunal then announced something new. From this day forward, the Kepler Accords are established. Laws that protect all sentient species from enslavement and forced servitude. Laws that guarantee the right of every species to develop without interference. Every species in this hall is invited to sign. 34 species signed that day. More would sign in the weeks that followed. The Valthrex remnant states were required to sign for any coalition support. A new galactic order was being born from the ashes of an empire. After the tribunal ended, Jiho walked through the city with Heijin. They passed memorials being built. One for Kepler 7's victims, others for species that had suffered under Valthrex rule. The galaxy was remembering its pain so it wouldn't repeat it. What will you do now? Heijin asked. Help rebuild. There are systems that need new power grids, colonies that need infrastructure. I broke a lot of things. I need to help fix them. You don't have to carry all of this alone. I know. But I choose to. I started this. I should see it through. They reached a memorial wall with 23 names carved into black stone. Junho, Minseo, Dayun, all the people who died at Kepler 7. Jiho placed his hand on the cold stone. I did it, he whispered. I made them pay. I hope that's enough. Doyun approached them. Dr. Park, there's someone who wants to meet you. A small being stepped forward. They were Drevnari, with blue skin and large eyes. Dr. Park, I am Celix. You freed me from the Valthrex laboratories. I wanted to thank you. More beings came forward. Crothians. Malvex. Species Jiho didn't even have names for. All of them freed because of what he had done. All of them alive because he had refused to break. We are building a research station, Celix said. A place where all species can work together peacefully. We would like to name it Kepler 2-3. In honor of those who died. Would you lead it? Jiho looked at Heejin. She nodded encouragingly. Yes, he said finally. I would be honored. Admiral Minho gave a speech at the memorial dedication. We prefer peace. Humanity has always preferred peace. But we are exceptionally good at war when we must be. Let this memorial remind the galaxy of both truths. We will extend our hand in friendship. But if you strike that hand, you will learn why humanity survived every predator our world created. You will learn why we conquered our own planet before reaching for the stars. You will learn that underestimating us is the last mistake you will ever make. Years passed. The Kepler 2-3 station orbited a peaceful world called New Haven. Administered jointly by 30 species, Jiho worked there with Heijin, developing technology to help rebuild what the Empire had destroyed. Yuna joined the Intelligence Division, specializing in rescue operations for enslaved beings. Salmon led the coalition fleet that protected Kepler Accord signatories. The Valthrex remnant states slowly rebuilt. Some became peaceful democracies. Others struggled with the transition. But none of them would ever threaten the galaxy again. The species they had conquered made sure of that. Vorath, stripped of his rank and titles, became a researcher at the new Galactic Council. He studied how empires fell, trying to understand how to prevent future tyrannies. Sometimes he and Jiho worked together. It was strange, awkward, but necessary. You were right, Vorath said one day. We were parasites. We took and never built. It took a human to show us what we had become. You're building now, Jiho replied. That's what matters. Not what you were, but what you choose to be. On Earth, schools taught about the Kepler 7 incident. Children learned about Dr. Jiho Park, who refused to break even when an empire tried to use him. They learned about the 23 who died. They learned about the Kepler Accords. They learned that humanity's greatest strength was not technology or weapons, but the will to survive and protect others. 10 years after the collapse, Jiho stood at the Kepler 2-3 Memorial Garden. Flowers from 30 worlds grew there. A living symbol of cooperation. Doyun found him among the flowers. Still thinking about it? The ambassador asked. Every day. I wonder if there was another way. If I could have stopped them without causing so much death. You gave them choices. They made the wrong ones. That's not your fault. Maybe. Or maybe. I'm just telling myself that to sleep at night. The galaxy is better because of what you did. Thousands of species are free. Millions of beings are no longer slaves. That has to count for something. Quote, Jiho looked at the memorial wall with the 23 names. I did it for them. For Junho, and Minseo, and Daeun. For everyone who died because the Valthrex thought they were superior. I wanted them to understand what happens when you hurt humans. What happens when you think being physically stronger makes you better. And they learned. The whole galaxy learned. Ships from 100 species passed overhead, their lights twinkling in the evening sky. Trade ships, diplomatic vessels, scientific expeditions. The galaxy that the Valthrex Empire had tried to conquer was now working together in ways that would have seemed impossible 10 years ago. Jiho smiled slightly. They kidnapped a human scientist. They thought they were taking a tool, something they could use and discard. They were wrong. They learned that humans don't forget, that we don't forgive easily, that underestimating us is the last mistake anyone ever makes. And the galaxy is better for learning that lesson, Doyun said. Even if the lesson was hard, especially because the lesson was hard. Easy lessons are forgotten quickly. Hard lessons are remembered forever. They stood together as the sun set, painting the sky in colors no Earth sunset could match. Somewhere in the galaxy, species were learning to live together. Somewhere, former enemies were becoming friends. Somewhere, the idea that strength meant domination was dying, replaced by the understanding that true strength meant cooperation. And on a peaceful world called New Haven, at a research station named for the dead, a human scientist who had broken an empire worked to build something better. Something that would last. Something that would remind the galaxy that humanity's greatest weapon was never technology. It was that humans never forgot why they fought. They fought for those they lost. They fought for those who suffered. They fought so that others could be free. The Valthrex learned that lesson. They kidnapped a human scientist, thinking they would gain a weapon. Instead, their civilization begged for mercy. And in the end, mercy was exactly what they received. Not the mercy of forgiveness, but the mercy of a second chance. The chance to be better, to build instead of take, to cooperate instead of conquer. That was the lesson humanity taught the galaxy. That was the legacy of Dr. Jiho Park and the 23 who died at Kepler 7. Mercy is not weakness. Justice is not revenge. And humanity, for all its faults, understands the difference.